The thing, what is holding them together is that they're working at intellectual and mental tasks about developing skills. You can see that somebody there in the sitting with his back to us is working on a laptop, and other people are working with books and papers, etc. And there's material up on the whiteboard on the wall. So to handle this complexity, they're beginning to focus on certain details and ignore others. The questions about what this group is for in the context of the wider school, in context of what the school is for, is not being attended to. So there's people are developing inside themselves pictures and models of how to behave, how to relate, not just to the people who you can see, but to the people elsewhere. The principal of the school, the director, the head, and the management of the school, etc., are not part of the area which is being paid attention to. Yet this is an important potential area of learning which will certainly be affecting how they develop and how they grow and think about working in their future lives. So in terms of coming to the educational process at its pinnacle, here is a young man at a university. His organizational capacity to understand what's going on is probably at its lowest. There will have been structures, etc., in the school and ways in which things have worked which enabled some kind of learning to be happening about what the school is for, its reputation, its success in terms of attracting new entrants and good teachers, etc. Now the whole thing is focused on this individual working on their own, dealing with focused learning, mental activity. The picture which is emerging here very clearly, it's emerging earlier on, but it's now coming very clearly, that the organization is seen as the servant of this person, rather than him being an agent in what the organization as a whole is for. It's important, of course, that he works to the best of his ability, but unless there's also an area of activity which enables the wider organization, why it works in the way in which it does, how it's led, all the questions about power and authority are worked at, one's going to be potentially running into difficulty when this. So here we are, in the working world. 3 people, clearly they're working in some kind of building, construction kind of setting. But just imagine if they've had experiences of going through school of the range of different ways in which they've been learning to belong to the organization, how to take part in it, what's going on in their hearts and their minds. If there's not been some development of a capacity to analyze the organization in which they're a part, then they're really going to be faced with some great, great difficulties.
John, if I could just come in. Can I come in there and just make a comment?
Yeah, I was just about to say.
I think, just listening to that, it really does highlight how one's earlier life is a process of minimizing all kinds of emotional complexity to try and oversimplify and focus on the mental the older one gets. So we're actually learning to avoid the complexity once we get into this adult life. You're talking there about the 2 workmen there wondering how to contribute, how to take part, and their past 20-odd years have been about how learning not to take part almost
yes.
at one level. Yeah.
Did you want to sort of take that a bit further?
Yeah. Well, I think just reflecting, on my experiences of organisational life, both being an employee myself and also as a consultant, I think there is, there's a real desire to oversimplify things just in order to get on and to be able to keep doing what needs to be done next. And all of the time, the complexity is sort of tucked away into the background, or it's pushed upwards or projected onto somebody else. Somebody recently described it to me as passing the hot potato, that nobody actually wants to hold it, but let's pass it to somebody else. And there's a kind of acknowledgement that it's there, but not knowing what to do with it, because it's almost an alien in the organisation.
That's a lovely picture, actually, passing a hot potato, because there's something which is actually nourishing, which could actually, you benefit from consuming it, but rather than equip yourself with the knife and fork that would enable you to eat it, you just pass it on. It's really a lovely picture, but I think that is what I'm trying to draw attention to and tease out, which is that the dimension of prior experience in terms of the educational process is not addressing an area which then leaves real difficulties when people get into the workplace, and the habit, as you say, of passing the responsibility to somebody else, because you don't feel that you have either the competence or the power to be able to grapple with it, is very, very deep-seated.
And one of the other things I've noticed as well is the difficulty in managing relationships, the difficulty in relating. It's interesting that you described in the school, the institution being a servant of the student. And I think that often one tends to look at the relation and the relationships and the relating in quite black and white terms. And actually there's a lot of complexity behind how one relates to different people and different situations in organisational life. And actually that's not something which is generally taught, from my experience, or traditionally hasn't been well taught in schools sometimes, and certainly it's largely ignored in organisational life. Again, it is oversimplified, that people are either good or bad. There's no, well, they either like us or not like us when talking about whether somebody's getting on or not. And it's only in recent years that there's been more talk about emotional intelligence and being able to look at people's relative strengths and weaknesses. But this idea of relating is very important.
Yes, but it's having in a sense the mental toolkit to help you to know, to think about relating within an organisational context. I think Goldman's work on emotional intelligence and lots of other people who work in that field is hugely important. But what I think we're offering, you at Zenergy and we at Grub, is how do we actually frame this so that we can begin to be able to release the resources, the potential, the possibilities which we can see from understanding about emotional intelligence, and even nowadays increasingly spiritual intelligence. How do you release this in an organisational setting? Because unless it's been framed and understood and thought about in organisational terms, you may actually be simply creating deeper and deeper problems. We're actually doing from Grub, we're actually beginning to develop a program to work with schools as to how one actually includes this kind of thinking into the way schools work. But this is not the place to go into what we're thinking about that. Let me move on and try and conceptualize what we've been describing more sort of pictorially. If we think of those three people that we've just had on the screen, and sort of think through about what's actually going on as they engage with each other, it looks at the picture as if they're like our two figures here, A and B, as if they were just talking to each other. But in fact, each of them, all three of them, will have images in their mind built up from their previous experiences about how to relate and work with other people.